Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on Saturday night. I'm not doing the people's mic, but if you want to repeat after me, you're free to do that. My name is Bob Redman. I'm the program director here at Town Hall, and this has been a fun process to organize along with our colleagues at The Stranger. And I just want to do a couple quick surveys of the audience. How many people have been to an Occupy Seattle event? How many have been to an Occupy Seattle General Assembly? Does anyone here consider themselves not part of Occupy Seattle? Okay, that's very interesting. So I'm going to introduce Nick Licata, who's going to moderate this thing, and I'm really glad, Nick, that you're going to do this and not me. But I will take responsibility for inviting our panelists tonight. We have 3 people with direct experience from Occupy Seattle. That's Tabitha, J.M. Wong, and Joshua Ferris. They're from different work committees, but I also want to be clear that my invitation was not to Occupy Seattle, that they would be representing the whole movement. So things that they say are the things that I asked them to say would be from them and not from the movement, because the GA wasn't necessarily part of this setting up this event. And then also on the panel, Nick Hanauer, author of The True Patriot and Gardens of Democracy, which the publisher sent some free copies, so if you're one of the first 150 in tonight, you got one of those. And also an entrepreneur and investor with Second Avenue Partners, Lynn Dodson, Secretary-Treasurer of the Washington State Labor Council, and Frank Greer of the National Political Consultants, GMMB, and also Frank was a co-founder of Amnesty International and worked with Nelson Mandela on his election after he got out of prison. Nick Licata is a longtime Seattle organizer first, and that led to his election to Seattle City Council, where he also served as City Council President. And I should end by saying that Nick always opens his committee meetings with a poem. I'm going to recite one tonight. It comes from Muhammad Ali. It's 2 words: me, we. All right. We'll see how this discussion goes. Thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you, Bob. You did the hard part. You introduced all the panel members. So I'm going to make this, my role is basically just to keep things rolling along. And why don't we just go right down the line here and introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself. You got a couple minutes, and that will begin the conversation. Go ahead. Joshua?
My name's Joshua. I'm with the Tactical Working Group. Is this my 2 minutes?
Yes.
This is my 2 minutes. I think it's critical that I use this 2 minutes to respond to the Seattle Central's administration's current media smear attempt on us, where they try to say on one hand that we're trashing the school and that we're somehow responsible for violence on Broadway, everything that goes wrong, every incident, and that now that there's a needle that has showed up in the children's play area. And then on the other hand, we're sweeping up the school, cleaning up the school, and me explaining on King 5 that we told a dope dealer that he wasn't welcome there. So we got 2 different sides of it. They obviously don't want us there, and I see this as our occupation there as a defense of the public space and the public interest. So that's 2 different sides. I just decided to do what King 5 didn't do, and that's actually investigate what the administration was claiming. I asked my friend Athena, who worked at that children's play area for 2 years, before she was laid off because of budget cuts. She said that every morning the teachers go out there and they check that play area, and at least once or twice a week, for as many years as she worked there, they would find needles, and they would find condoms and other filth, and they would clean it up before the children would go out there to play. And so we come to Seattle Central, and we say we're occupying. I'm there, and the chief of security says to a family, careful with your children, there's needles in this grass. But that's okay. I tell the family, I know he's trying to make you feel safe, but we've swept up and we've cleaned up and we've raked this green area before our tents. We're trying to make this a better place. And then the new chief of security says, oh, with your occupation, the usual suspects have been displaced. And then there's no complaints about needles in the play area our first week there. But then the next week, Seattle Central goes on and says, it tries to imply that we are a cause of every single violent incident there, of every single, now there's a needle that's shown up, I guess, in the children's play area, and we're somehow a cause of that.
But Joshua,
so if we're a threat, and they actually have the children's security in mind, then why the hell are they allowing that whole child daycare to be closed down in the spring? And who's really to blame here? Who's got the children's best interests at hand? And who is displaying hypocrisy?
thank you very much, Josh. Ned Canauer.
Good evening. So, for 30 years since Reagan was elected, the nation has been in the grip of a set of insidious but persuasive ideas that if the rich got richer, everyone would be better off. That the rich, and only the rich, are job creators. That higher taxes will destroy the economy. That corporations always serve the public good. That corporations should have the same rights as citizens. That money is speech. That the more we limit government and regulations, the more prosperous we all will be. That 1 million acts of individual selfishness somehow automatically add up to a great society. In the last few weeks, thanks to people like this, Americans have finally begun to realize that some of this may not be true. In 2007, I wrote a book with a guy named Eric Liu called The True Patriot that attempted to rebut these ideas. It attempted to make a moral argument that if America and patriotism were to have any meaning, it meant putting other people first, meant putting the country first, and that being selfish was morally wrong. For the last 3.5 years, we've been working on another book, this cute little one here, which makes the paired intellectual argument that being selfish isn't just morally wrong, it's stupid. And at the heart, thank you. At the heart of that argument is the idea that radical and rising inequality kills true prosperity, and the associated political inequality kills democracy. For 2 years, we've been working on projects related to inequality, trying to understand why people haven't been pissed off before, frankly, and why it's taken the country so long to wake up to such stark and just remarkable separation between the haves and the have-nots, between the 1% and the 99%. And then, magically, fortunately, Occupy came along. In my opinion, and I've been working on this for a long time, this is the most important social movement of the last 30 years. If you care about a stable and secure democracy, if you care about an economy that works for everyone, this is our moment. So thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Nick. Tabitha? I'm sorry. Jamie. I apologize.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm a nursing student at Seattle Central. I've been a nursing assistant, a CNA, for a few years now, and also been part of the anti-budget cut struggle. I'm a member of a multiracial revolutionary organization called the Black Orchid Collective, and also a member of the People of Color Caucus at Decolonize Occupy Seattle. This Friday, together with Hip Hop Occupies, we are putting together an event called Rise and Decolonize to assert anti-racist, anti-imperialist demands within the Occupy movement. In fact, Mr. Licata, your office is actually giving us the go-around for the sound permit, and I hope you can help fix that. We will be giving out flyers around this later. So I want to talk about some inspiring things about Occupy Seattle. We realize that many of us are already leaders. We have the ability and capacity to think critically, have the vision to strategize, and we still have a lot to learn, and we make a lot of mistakes, but what we know is we do not need leadership from the Democratic Party, from the union bureaucracies, Democratic Party advisors. We know that we can lead ourselves. We are too big to fail. So we have all also experienced the General Assembly. We have all been frustrated by the General Assembly. For what it is, it creates a forum where everyone can actually have a voice. After this experience with the frustrating General Assembly, many of us will no longer be satisfied with the voting system that only allows us to choose between two Wall Street politicians, both funded by the 1%. My 2 minutes is coming up, so let me keep going. So people, one other thing I've seen is also people are pooling their skills and their knowledge. We have artists, nurses, cooks. Everyone is putting in work, not to be paid, but to build something sustainable, to have a glimpse of a new society. This shows me how capitalism is a primitive system. It's a primitive system that makes people work for money to generate profit for just the 1%. It needs to be replaced by a society where people work for the community to provide things for use, not for profit. And we are doing it at Occupy, Decolonize Occupy Seattle. So if we want this broader vision to come into fruition, we need to do some next steps. We need to build workplace, schools, and neighborhood direct action committees and general assemblies. We need general assemblies in workplaces, schools, and neighborhood. We'll work with anybody, but we have to maintain our independence from nonprofit leaders who will try to co-opt us, Democratic Party politicians who are gearing up for 2012 elections, we all know that, and union bureaucrats. Myself and others, we were involved in an action yesterday. We can talk about how Decolonize Occupy Seattle is working with the Umoja Peace Center in the Central District to try to get community space for youth of color who have been displaced by gentrification. Specifically, we also need to fight Gregoire's budget proposal. We need to learn from what workers in Greece, in Egypt have done. They have organized strikes with community support to show them that we can shut down capitalism if they dare to cut us. So once we get to the place where we occupy workplaces and run them with general assemblies, we can then begin to dismantle the environmentally destructive production that is all around us and begin to form sustainable ecological alternatives. We can redistribute food. That's not a famine. That's not a problem with not enough food. There's a problem with hoarding. There's a problem with people speculating on food to hike up commodity prices so people in the third world die. We need to change that. We need to also radically shorten the work week by replacing drudgery, all the drudgery we feel with the 8 to 10 hour workday, and replace that with automation. We have the technology, we have machinery, so we can free our time to pursue art and culture, where everybody can contribute to this society according to our disability, according to our own abilities, and then take from society what we need. This, to me, is the ultimate goal of this movement, and that will be a much-needed revolution, and Occupy Seattle is only the first step we're taking. We have a long way to go.
Thank you. Now Tabitha.
My name's Tabitha, and I am a Montessori preschool assistant teacher. Yay, education. How am I going to follow that? That was amazing. All I can do is speak from my heart and from my own experience at Occupy Seattle. And what I have found at Occupy is some of the closest community and genuine relationships that I have been able to build in a very long time. The way our society is structured is we are kept so far apart from each other. You know, we drive in our cars, we're in our own car, we're in our own cubicle, we live in our own home, and we don't even know our neighbors' names. We have no relationship to the people that live around us. And that in itself is dangerous because it keeps us from organizing. It keeps us from talking about the issues in our neighborhood and actually coming together with innovative ways to solve those issues. So for me, Occupy Seattle has created this strong bond of community. And we are working in a way to deal with society's diseases. Because alcoholism, drug addiction, homelessness, these are all symptoms of a diseased society. And we can't keep trying, and we cannot keep trying to remedy these issues in ways that society has instilled, and it's mostly institutionalizing these people, making them crooks, criminals, because it doesn't reform anybody. It doesn't work, and it hasn't worked, so we need to be creative and form innovative ways to actually support, nurture these people, because ultimately they're feeling powerless, they're feeling like they don't have a purpose, and that's very dangerous. That is why the Occupy movement is global. This is a global movement. People all around the world are feeling that being oppressed by a select few is just morally wrong. This is fundamentally and morally wrong. One thing I'd like to just point out is people keep saying that the Occupy movement is a leaderless movement. That is not true. We do not have centralized leadership because that is dangerous. What we do have is a leaderful movement. People don't understand why we have working groups. We have working groups because people with a common interest, actually interested in, sustainability or the kitchen or tactical or, there's a plethora of groups. They come together with a common interest and they want to make it work for our little community that we are creating. We're trying to create a better world with these little microcosms of community. It's very important to us that we confront all the issues of race, of social classism, of even just our own personal prejudices. And this is the most accelerated learning that I have ever had. A week at Occupy is pretty much a month of just regular life experience. So it's a very accelerated learning experience, and I encourage anyone and everyone to come down, not just for a GA, but come for 2 days, spend the night if you can. Come for more than 2 hours. It's important to communicate, to talk to people, to meet people, and to go to a teach-in, go to an action, and get a more broader sense of what is happening here. Because I just want to remind you again, this is a global movement. This is global history that is being made, and we need to remind ourselves of this.
Thank you. Lynn Dodson.
Hi, Lynn Dodson, Secretary-Treasurer of the Washington State Labor Council. Kind of like to consider myself a union activist rather than bureaucrat, whatever. The fight of the Occupy movement, it's labor's fight. This is our fight. It's the fight for economic justice, for democracy, for what used to be called the American dream. We support the Occupy movement. We support the right, the obligation to stand up and fight for what's right. We're seeing at Penn State right now, silence is complicity. That's why our state and local labor councils have supported the work of the occupiers, not, of course, around the country, but here in Washington State, in Seattle, Spokane, Vancouver, Bellingham, Occupy Richland. Yeah. Through participation in actions and rallies, through coordination of our events, through Martin Luther King County Labor Council's Supply Occupy effort, through the Labor Support Committee, and through the participation of hundreds of union members around the state, through AFT, the American Federation of Teachers' Help at Seattle Central. We support this movement. The Occupy movement has called the question on the last 30 years of dismantling of the social safety net and the public infrastructure, of policies that Joe Stiglitz says are of, by, and for the 1%, of trickle-down policies that never actually reach below the very top, of a corporate culture of rapacious greed and little corporate citizenship, of Wall Street bailouts and political sellouts, of deregulation and of union busting. The movement is highlighting the fact that the very things most of us believe in, that most of us see as civil society, jobs with wages people can live on, safe workplaces, excellent public education systems, a dignified and independent old age, childcare, health care, to be able to work and play and live in places where the air and water aren't poisoning us. These are the things the most vulnerable taken care of. Business succeeding because we work hard and earn enough to spend in our communities. These have become increasingly out of reach and pilloried as impediments to the profit of the very richest. Something is wrong in this country. Saul Alinsky said that there's two types of power, the power of organized money and the power of organized people. We've seen the power of organized money at work for the past 30 years. I'm inspired by the Occupy movement. This is the power of organized people. This is a visionary movement for justice, propelled by people who've lived through decades of a culture of greed, self-interest, and moral bankruptcy. There have been plenty of excellent, well-developed, effective policy proposals from labor, from progressive, from social service organizations in the last 30 years. There is no dearth of clear, well-defined, good policy proposals. What's been missing has been the will to act on these by policymakers. The Occupy movement can and must incite that will. I look forward to talking tonight about how this movement does that, and also how those of us who work for policy change can do so in the spirit of this movement, advocating for policies that rebuild our communities and our democracy and not further exacerbate the income inequality that's destroying our democracy.
Thank you. Frank Greer.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everyone. It's very difficult to follow that list of speakers. I'm going to try to give just a little bit of historical perspective, because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking back to my days in 1964-65 in the Civil Rights Movement in Alabama, where I was born and raised. And it's interesting that we came out of that movement not with a necessarily identity with a political party, but with a very clear kind of agenda of what we wanted to accomplish. Voting rights law, public facilities law, an end to Jim Crow. So it began as a protest movement, but it ended up with very clear goals. And I came out of that into the anti-Vietnam War movement. And it's interesting, I was talking with someone earlier this evening about it. So how did we finally end the war in Vietnam? We brought about enough pressure in Congress that we cut off funds, and even though Richard Nixon had fooled the American people in 1972 to vote against George McGovern and elect him because he was, quote, going to end the war. People didn't take it on face value, and they said, we're going to cut off funds for the war. And it was a very clear agenda of what you had to do to accomplish the goals. I think every movement that I know of in the history of the United States, or in the history of the world, really, whether it was the suffragette movement, the environmental movement with Earth Day, Dennis Hayes here, who lives in our community, organized Earth Day. I worked on that campaign. It was aimed at the Environmental Protection Agency and the creation of environmental protection laws. Successful, right? All of these movements had very clear goals. And I think that one of the things, first of all, we've all been inspired by the Occupy movement. I've got to say, my wife, Stephanie Solene, who's very politically active, said, hey, when is somebody going to start protesting? We grew up in the age of civil rights and Vietnam, and when is somebody, and they did it this year, and it really inspired the nation. I guess my one concern is that it needs so desperately to have a clear message and a clear goal. And people are searching for that. And I think it's close to that. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily, and I see all the hands back there giving me this, but hey, could you hear somebody out before you kind of, okay, sorry. Here is my point. In the foundation of this country, which was a hell of a revolution, listen to me for a minute. When they established the Constitution, what were the first words they said? When in the course, the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for people to declare the reason that they separate from another country, listen to this phrase, a decent respect for the opinions of mankind, that is, for the opinions of others, requires that you declare the reasons that compel this separation. So the whole idea here is message and purpose and focus. And I may not be winning any friends, and I'm sure that everybody's going to be upset with me, but this movement can change the world, but it needs message, purpose, and very clear focus on what you want to accomplish. And that's all I wanted to say.
So, okay, all those opposed, raise your hand. The opposed have it. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. You want to do a vote? If this is a democracy, it's a democracy. I think we're doing a democracy type thing, right? Do you believe in democracy? If so, raise your hand if you want to do a General Assembly approach. Raise your hand high. All right. Those, okay, let's get a counter.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks
This
like.
is what talking to yourself looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is not very persuasive, but this
Check.
is not very persuasive.
So, I was raised that some people don't know what the General Assembly method is. Let's do it one more time. Let's do it one time because some people have not attended General Assembly. So, could you explain, like in 3 simple sentences, what General Assembly is?
A question?
Yes.
A movement about inclusion of many ways and many people and many styles. Can we have a few minutes to do it, share how we do it? Can we do it so that I could learn how it's done at the General Assembly? And then for those people who have difficulty hearing with that style, because my mother has some difficulty hearing the echo, this is really about everybody having a chance to express different
So I'm
ways.
going to repeat what you said. The person suggested that we not have a vote, that instead we just do General Assembly as an example of how it functions. I think that's correct. And what we have here is a panel that was invited by Town Hall. So if we want to adopt a democratic decision-making here, I would suggest that we have a democratic vote. And if we do a democratic vote, can I have one person from representing Town Hall on stage, please? Is there anyone representing Town Hall? Is there someone who is not a member of OS? No, we're all members of OS. Okay. I'd like to get someone who's neutral. You are. Okay, please, stand up here. And then we'll have you as well do the counter. So the 2 of you will be counters. Come around.
I think it's really important that we.
Very good.
Mic check.
And what we're going
Mic
to do.
check. Mic check.
Mic check.
I think it's really important
I think it's really important
that we explain to the public
that we explain to the public
what the Occupy Seattle
about Occupy Seattle
General Assembly format
General Assembly format
is.
All right. And did you want to give a 2 or 3 sentence description of General Assembly procedures?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is the orientation we read at the beginning of every General Assembly. I'd be happy to read it to educate everyone here if you guys are comfortable with that.
I think that would be a good suggestion. Go ahead.
The mic check seems hard, so I'm going to use this microphone for now. All right. The General Assembly makes decisions for the collective, not for individuals. Decisions that affect the whole are made by the General Assembly. Groups are for doing work and bringing proposals. If you have an idea, start a group. Don't ask the Assembly. Just find some friends and do it. Yelling really loud doesn't put you on stack. Raise your hand. Never repeat. A point someone's already made. Assembly time is precious. You can't speak every time. Think 3 times. Think 3 times before you speak. Does this help the Assembly make a better decision? Nothing is more precious
Nothing is more precious
than the thoughts of the quiet.
than the thoughts of the quiet.
Nothing is more precious
Nothing is more precious
than the words of the silenced.
than the words of the silent.
Speak up,
Speak up,
please,
please,
especially when it's really hard.
especially when it's really hard.
Use the people's microphone.
Use the people's microphone.
It makes us choose our words
It makes us choose our words,
and makes us listen.
and it makes us listen.
For those of you who don't know,
For those of you who don't know,
this is the people's mic.
this is the people's mic.
Facilitators make space and move process.
Facilitators make space and move process.
Facilitators never
Facilitators never
present content
present content
or represent another's idea.
or represent another's idea.
The assembly is responsible
The assembly is responsible
for keeping the facilitators in check.
for keeping the facilitators in check.
No one can speak for you.
No one can speak for you.
That's why we need you here.
That's why we need you here.
Take care of each other.
Take care of each other.
The assembly is responsible
The assembly is responsible
for signing hand signals
for signing hand signals
so the facilitators know
facilitators know
what to facilitate.
what to facilitate.
I'm going to show you our hand signals.
I'll show you our hand signals.
First,
First,
twinkles.
twinkle.
I like this.
I like this.
I agree.
I agree.
Anti-twinkles.
Anti-twinkle.
I don't like what's being said.
I don't like what's being said.
I disagree.
I disagree.
Ears.
Ears.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
This is taking too much time.
This is taking too much time.
I get it.
I get it.
V.
V.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
We're not using that one tonight.
Not using that one tonight.
T.
T.
You are off topic.
You are off topic.
Process point.
Process point.
You are not following
You are not following
accepted process.
accepted process.
Block.
Block.
I believe
I believe
the vote we have just taken
the vote we have just taken
violates the basic principles
violates the basic principle
of our movement.
of our movement.
And the most important hand signal,
And the most important hand signal,
raised hand.
raise hand.
I would like to be on stack
I would like to be on staff
and speak when it's my turn.
and speak when it's my turn.
That's how we do.
That's how we do it.
Thank you. May I?
Mic check.
Check.
What's that?
What's that? We operate on progressive stack, which means if you are a member of historically marginalized groups, you speak first.
Thank you. Okay, since, yes, I timed it, it was about 7 minutes. So we'll give 7 minutes to a description, up to 7 minutes, please, to what's the options, right? Because we don't know what the options are. And this person had a question. Did you want to?
I just wanted to say something. There's a lot of us that aren't that familiar with this process. And maybe because some of us are a little too old, we don't quite understand when you're screaming like that. It's a lot easier to hear this kind of discourse. And the topics that are being discussed here, the issues that we're all facing are so important that I think that this process alienates people. It takes up a lot of time, and being part of a club isn't gonna make it. I think we need to be direct and purposeful and really get our message across, and this isn't gonna work.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you. I want to briefly describe an alternative. Please, we're taking turns. Briefly describe what the alternative to a General Assembly would be in the context of why we're here, and then we'll have a vote. Oh, and I'm sorry, could you come back? Because I do want 2 people to do the counting. So the alternative would be that we would, in my role here as whatever, facilitator, MC, I will ask a question of the people who've been invited to be on the panel. After they have talked about it, if they wish, then we will open it up to the audience. We will use the stacking procedure so that those people who are generally not given an opportunity to participate will go first. We will time, whatever time was taken up here will be the same amount of time that the audience will have. And that then I'll ask a second general question. We'll follow the same procedure. After those 2 questions, then we will take questions from the audience, 1 question at a time, using the same procedure so that we are balanced. So that's the alternative, okay? So let's have, we'll have the vote count, and what we'll do, make it easy, can we both come over here, please? Let's do 1 section at a time, that section over here. Turn around so you can see. We're going to count hands. Oh, okay, that sounds good. I'm sorry. The suggestion was we talk to each other. I'm gonna give 3 minutes for people to talk to each other, and then we'll do a vote. Okay? All right. I'm sorry. What?
Friendly amendment.
A friendly amendment.
The mic's not on.
Tell me and I'll repeat.
My proposal for amendment is make the people's mic optional in this situation, so people who have trouble hearing can then hear it fine, but everything else go according to process.
Okay, that I'll repeat in case you had. We use the microphone under the GA system to help people. Okay. But we're going to give 3 minutes for people to discuss it among themselves, and then we'll do a vote count. So start discussing amongst yourselves.
You're going to lose your audience.
I know, I understand. Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to stop the audience. I totally agree. I would not have heard this way, but
Look at the great turnout you got.
most of these people have been.
Great, so we'll just come up and we'll keep our listening.
Yeah. No, how we're going to do is, let's think about this. We don't avoid 2 separate votes. It takes too long. No,
not 2 separate votes.
No,
One vote.
just one vote. General Assembly, gets defeated, then we do the alternative.
Okay, that's great. If you could just re-clarify the proposals before we go the first time.
No, and we have nothing.
Okay,
You guys,
so people don't know what they're voting on.
Well, that's why they're talking.
Okay, no, just say like, right after they're done talking, be like, we're taking out a vote.
No, I will do that.
That's all.
I will do that. I promise. Thank you very much. I thought you were very articulate. Seriously. By the way, what is your name? Melanie. Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Do you live in Seattle?
I live in Issaquah. Do
Oh.
you have a card?
Yeah. No, once you grab your card, yeah.
But this is so sad. The entire movement's going to die because of this.
Yes, I know.
That's so.
You know, I'm on the city council, so I just wanted to I'm sorry I have a card. I did. But Here, you got a pen?
Say something. This is getting insane.
No, no, wait.
Can I?
No, let's wait. No, I don't, please. I just prefer to let people know. All right, you have 30 seconds left. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much. Time is up. Thank you. We'll have the two folks up here. Okay. If the two people who are counting can come up here, I want to make sure we're all following the same procedures here. Thank you. Could you please come here for a moment? All right. Instructions for you. I want you both to count. Okay, wait. Stay right here. Guys. Okay, so these two individuals will be doing the counting. They'll do one section at a time. And I'll point the section out. The vote will be those in favor of the GA system that was described earlier. And if you are not raising your, and then after that, we'll do a vote for the alternative, okay? Well, no, the amendment will be included. Yes, the amendment's included, so that the GA will use a microphone. No, we're not going to restate the proposals because we took a lot of time doing that, and we had 3 minutes of discussion afterwards. I'm sorry. Okay, so that section first. Raise your hands if you want to support the GA, please, and they'll do the count. Just this section right here. This is with the amendment. This is the GA system with the amendment. The amendment means that you get to use a microphone. Okay? And let's do the count right now. A little exercise in democracy. Okay, you got it? Okay, this section here then. We're using the aisle as the separation. Okay. We just lost the counter.
Style. With a mic. Being optional. That's the vote we're taking right now. Please raise your hand in this section if you agree with doing the GA style.
Can I speak here? People don't know. They're like, there's one vote, but they're not sure what the other options are. So the amendment, no one knows what, there's three options supposedly. But people still don't know, just so you know, they don't know.
This is going to destroy the entire movement. This is too important. I'm out of here.
All right. You know, this whole time here ends in a half hour, so it's very interesting. This may be a good exercise. Okay, go ahead. Let's do the count for the middle section. Just go ahead, raise your hand for GA, middle section. Okay, this section here. Did you? Wait, we gotta get the counters here. They're still. Are you through now? Are you through getting the numbers? Did you get that? All right. From this aisle to the rest of the room.
People know that things are.
What? Okay. We're going to finish the vote. Okay. Those with the hands against, please raise your hands and start. Hands against. Hands against. Raise your hand. What? From a visual, it looks to me like it's a majority.
Why? I thought it was democracy.
Okay, we had people from the OS saying they think it's a majority against as well. We want to speed up this process. So I'm going to toss a suggestion out to the panel. They'll get some time, and then we're going to basically do a stack. You have OS organizers do the stack question. Very good. So here's the first question to the panel. How does this OS movement, Occupy Seattle or Occupy movement, differ from the Tea Party movement in their ability to shape this country's political agenda? We know that the Tea Party is basically against government, against taxes, and that they've been able to elect about 24 people to Congress. What happens with the Occupy movement as far as what's their message that, and does it translate into the democratic process for electing people, or should it? Okay, we'll begin with begin at this end over here. Nick, do you want to? Anybody at the table? Frank, go ahead.
No, I'd be glad to comment on it because I've actually thought a lot about the impact of the Tea Party movement on the United States, and it's been very destructive. But it was, by the way, organized in opposition to the health care bill. It was funded by a lot of corporate money. Dick Armey and the Tea Party Express basically funded that movement. And they created the illusion of a popular movement with popular support. Never had it. Reality is that most of their candidates went down in 2010 and they lost. And they lost because they were very extreme. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had to do a presentation, so I went back and I kind of looked at the data, and I said, so where does the Tea Party stand? Well, Tea Party right now is at 24% support. There's more than 50% of the Republican Party that is negative on the Tea Party. So they did a wonderful job of creating the myth and the image of a popular movement. But they really didn't have the support of people on the issues. Because I think this is a progressive country that really wants progressive policies and progressive politics. Then I looked at where the Occupy movement stood in the polls. And the really good news, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm trying to speak, and she is telling me to speed up, and I just want to finish where the Occupy movement stands, because I think that what you're doing is very impolite, okay? So where we stand today...
Please,
okay.
No interruptions.
I don't want to pick a fight. I am in here for progressive politics reasons, not for the process reason, but let me just tell you where you stand today. Over 60% of the people in America support the Occupy movement because they think the message of the 1% having too much and the 99% not having the policies that basically protect their interests is something they can support, okay? So I would say the danger, no one wants to hear this, is that in the way this movement conducts itself, we learned this in the civil rights movement, in the anti-war movement, you can either build support and change the country, or you can turn off support and basically fail. And I don't want you to fail.
Jamie?
Should I use the mic? So I think there are a few differences. One is the decolonized Occupy movements are part of a global movement. The Tea Party is part of a white supremacist minority movement. So that's one key difference. And we are in solidarity with people from all over the world. We are talking about Egypt, we're talking about the Middle East, we're talking about Africa, we're talking about Asia. And that's one key difference, and that's why it's so important for us to make that front and center so we don't have the Tea Party types and neo-Nazi types coming on the libertarian banner and trying to take over this movement. We need to decolonize the Occupy movements. Recognize this as stolen native land, and that's the first foot forward. We have to decolonize this country. That's one of the big differences. The other difference, I think this gentleman has critiqued us a lot for not having demands and not knowing what we want. But if I've heard some of the interviews by the Tea Party, you know, I disagree with them, but then one of the things that they have said about their own movement is that they got co-opted by the Republican Party to become less right-wing, which is kind of ironic. But then one of the big things is that they had demands. They had demands that got co-opted by the Republican Party. And one of the biggest strengths, I think, of the Occupy, decolonized Occupy movements is that we have demands. We all have demands, but we're not going to agree on the lowest common denominator, because that's what often happens when a huge mass movement puts out one single demand. And guess what? Those with most resources, AKA Democratic Party, left-wing Democratic Party people within the Occupy movement, are going to push through their demands. So I have demands. People around me have demands. We want to own all the homes. We don't say no more foreclosures. We're too big to fail. Banks need to give out all their money, and to capitalism. I don't think you agree with that. Or some people here don't agree with that. I know what I want. Many people know what they want, but we don't have to force a common agreement, because that often becomes lowest common denominator. And that's a lesson from the Tea Party movement.
Jamie, Nick wanted to speak, but I want to do a follow-up question to you and the other OS representatives, or at least people on the table here. How do you see the OS movement being translated into the democratic process in elections? Are they relevant or not? Okay, go ahead. Do you want Joshua?
The OS movement is the democratic process.
It certainly is.
And regarding your previous question about the similarities between the Tea Party and the OS movement, I would say that they are both, well, not anymore, but there is an effort to co-opt the legitimate democratic process, because so many people in positions of power have no idea how to organize themselves. And so their idea is to somehow grab on to the coattails of what we've created and sort of bring it in to what's been failing in an effort to sustain their unsustainable trajectory. Now,
I think I'll just say something real quick, is that a lot of us, through the experience of the General Assembly, through the experience of trying to run this camp, are learning to do things, or recognize that we have the knowledge and abilities that politicians are being paid to do. Politicians are getting hella money from corporations to put through policies, to like cut down crime, all that stuff, you know? And we're thinking on the same problems, we're thinking on the same issues. How do you stop people of color from being targeted by the cops? We just come at it from a different angle to be against like police brutality. There's some politicians who are for police brutality and like get paid to enforce that. We're coming at it from a different angle, but we're thinking of the same problems of how do we govern ourselves as a collective, and we're not getting paid for it. And so once you have that experience, then you wonder, where are these people getting paid and elected through this false process to run us when we actually have the ability and skills to do it ourselves? So I do think the Decolonize Occupy movements, they put democracy into practice and give us that tool and opportunity. I mean, we're constantly repressed by the state. We have cops all around us hounding us to try to destroy that really beautiful process. But we have the opportunity to start to imagine how different things could be. And so when we hear politicians say you have to vote for the lesser of two evils, if you don't vote for the Democrats, then damn, these crazy Republicans are going to take power and then they'll slash everything. But then when you think about it, who's pushing austerity in Washington State right now? I think it's a Democrat.
So I want.
Nick first, and then I'll get you.
Could I say something? I think it's a really interesting question, how this movement and the Tea Party movement intersect with politics. And one way of addressing that is to pose the question, who's been the most progressive president of the last 40 years? Well,
Nixon.
It turns out, Nixon. Richard Nixon was the most progressive president of the last 40 years. It's kind of shocking when you actually line it up, but it is a fact. And that's, please let me speak. Clearly manners, not strong. So anyway, the important thing to recognize is that that's not because Richard Nixon was a marvelous guy or loved, progressivism. It's because that's the way the wind was blowing. That we were a progressive country with progressive ideals, and even though he was kind of a shithead, he still, let's be clear, he was kind of a creep, he still enacted some incredibly important progressive policies. And the thing that's important about this movement, and I agree completely, it's not about electing Democrats. Because we have a Democratic governor, we have a Democratic House, we have a Democratic Senate in this state, and we are in a mess, right? So it is not about electing Democrats or Republicans, but it is about being the wind, about changing the culture and the ideals. That's what it's about. It's not.
We can turn it on.
We'll fix that. Can we get that microphone to work, please?
I'm not familiar with mics. There we are.
I think we can adjust it. Huh?
I just wanted to say, I think I would really,
okay,
can you
go
hear me
ahead.
now? I would really like to thank the people in Occupy Seattle, the people that are out there. It's very cold, it's wet. I've been down there. I think they're really the foot soldiers at this movement. And I think this is a movement about diversity, because 99% of this population means a lot of diversity. And we have to be tolerant of one another. Whether we want to speak with the General Assembly style, which I thought was a marvelous exhibit of what they're doing and how they're communicating. I think it's a brilliant way of communicating. I find it a little hard to hear, and as does my nearly 80-year-old mother. But I think there was sort of a criticism or negativity expressed about that style being shown, and I was so sad to see that, because this is what this movement's about. It is about respecting the diversity of this country and how we do things differently. And in terms of setting goals right now, I think you're absolutely right. You're part of the diversity. We need clear goals. But to develop clear goals, you need to evolve emotionally, to clarify, to refine those goals. And this is a baby movement. We still aren't there yet. So what you're seeing in terms of, I think, this emotion and this wonderful emotion and talking about community is an evolution of a very, I agree, important movement. And I feel it. I'm a middle-class person, whatever that means. But I remember I lived in California in Los Angeles in 1980, and I thought, oh my God, Reagan's taken over. And so many people thought it was going to be a changing point in our history.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say, okay, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
But I come from a conservative background. I'm a child of veterans. I believe in this movement. I hope it spreads throughout Seattle into every park. I'm behind it. And I think the middle class has not seen what's going to happen. They haven't really got. It's going to be hitting hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I explained earlier, the system that we're going to follow is we allow people from the floor on a stacked basis. I'm going to assume that it's already been stacked. I don't know properly or not, but I'll let the people who are OS in charge make that decision. But we'll have 3 people, in addition to the first person that spoke. We're going to ask another question, and then we'll go back. If you want to remain in line, that's fine. You'll be the next one up. So 3 more people, and presumably been approved by the OS, so go ahead.
Just to clarify, that was 3 questions from us, then 1 from you to the panel, and then...
Well, I thought you were going to comment on the question that was made. If you want to ask a question, that's fine too.
Okay.
My name is Doug Johnson. I'm a member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 46. For 40 years, we as a country have been very complacent, very, very complacent. Now we have finally woken up. Change is slow, and the gentleman here mentioned that back in the early 70s, they had a list of demands and they followed through with those demands. But you must understand that this takes time. And as the lady before me said, we are in the embryonic stages of this movement, okay? We need to take this one step at a time. The pyramids were not built in a day. The Constitution was not written overnight. And we also need to remember that the corporate media out there is portraying our movement as nothing but a bunch of homeless youth, a bunch of people with health issues, mental health issues, homeless people, homeless families, fights. All this negative media that we're getting from the corporate media people is a product of 40 years of the social degradation that we have received through the administration and through the politics where we have been complacent about. Unions, religious groups, seniors, school students, and the police officers need to be on the same page in order for us to make this movement succeed. But we need to embrace all, and we need to listen to all to understand everyone's needs. This movement isn't going to change overnight. We're moving one step at a time, and the first step was the divestment. And I have talked to the King County Labor Council to try to divest their funds from the big corporate banks. I have talked to the Washington State Labor Council. I'm getting tepid results through our international union on this. But that's the first step in the process. The next step we got is the super committee and the special session in Olympia that starts on the 28th. And we all need to be active on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a few simple proposals, or I guess concerns. For starters, just for the sake of this meeting, I think instead of people clapping, we should just twinkle. It would make things faster and allow everyone to hear everyone else. Also, I don't really have much to say except it's amazing to think about how much influence corporations have had over our lives. And I'm not just talking within the past, 50 years. I'm talking within the past 500 years. The Massachusetts Bay Colony, that was a corporation. And I think it's important for everyone to have a sense of individual responsibility and self-examination. I understand that I've been brainwashed by certain forces, and I need to try to take account of those forces, and everyone should. And I guess that's it generally. I don't have much
Thank you.
more to say.
Thank you. Okay, you'll be the last person for this round. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to identify myself as also a homeowner, and I've been down to the Occupy a couple times. I've not been part of a General Assembly, but I've sat in on a couple of the process groups. What I want to say is the way that our democracy looks like to me right now is that it's and I think in your best intentions, Nick, I think though you are forcing a vote too early before we actually had a chance to come to a place where collectively we were kind of unanimous. I mean, mostly, So I think that our system actually creates polarities, and that the Tea Party and all of these things are created because there's winners and losers in our system. And what I see Occupy, one of the powers of Occupy to me, is that it's about making everybody a winner, or as many as possible a winner, that life is a winner, that Earth is a winner, that our nation is a winner, that all the globe's nations are winners. And that's what we really want. And I think that we are missing the mark when we're following the rules of Robert's Rules of Order, the general democratic process. And it's not the principles that we're opposed to, or Occupy that I see as opposed to. It's the process itself that causes problems.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll be the first on the next go-round, so just stay there. For the panel, a year from now, what do you want to see happen with OS? What would be a sign of success in your opinion?
I would like to say something. I can only speak for myself. I'm not the voice of Occupy Seattle. What I would like to see personally in the next year is more direct action, more emphasis on the importance of preserving and rehabilitating our environment that we have destroyed. Because the fact of the matter is, if we continue this consumeristic lifestyle, this throwaway culture, we cannot exist on the planet for longer than 50 years. Our water is poisoned, our air is poisoned, to the point where we are all likely to have cancer. Yeah, we have the technology to remedy that, but still, do we want to live like this? Do we want our Earth to reflect our own poisoned bodies? So what I would like to see is more of an emphasis on environmental issues, more action towards that, less dependency on oil, coal, which are limited resources. It doesn't make any sense to keep pursuing these resources to keep this lifestyle going But it also doesn't make sense to turn this lifestyle into a green movement because consumption is not sustainable, period.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, so, excuse me. I think that to Occupy's credit, in the last 30, maybe 60 days, there's been more conversation in the United States about inequality than in the prior 10 years. This is an unbelievable accomplishment. And my goal for 1 year out is if you could get 10% of the people in America, just 1 in 10 Americans, to understand the facts of inequality, both economic and political, if they were cognizant of it and if they were facile with the facts, you would change the political culture in this country for the next 30 years. And that's my goal.
Thank you. Jamie, and then you. Jamie?
There are many things I hope to see in the next year, but one of the biggest things is I hope to see workplaces being occupied. And workers, the unorganized, predominantly immigrant women workers taking over workplaces, setting their own schedules, cutting down on the hours so we don't get exhausted from overwork, hire some of our unemployed family members because all this, it doesn't make sense that some people are working so much, working so fast, while so many people are unemployed. This just doesn't make sense. It only makes sense under capitalist profit accumulation principles, and that needs to change.
Thank you. Joshua first, and then Lynn.
I don't hope, and I think that's a dangerous word. I will work to organize with my brothers and sisters for a better world, but I know that things will be worse next year. It is a matter of simple arithmetic, mathematical equations that people started to put together 60 years ago. And we have rising poverty coming our way, more poverty, more homelessness, more suicidal veterans, more broken households, more mortgages upside down, more people out in the streets, and we'll have more mass extinction, and we'll have rising costs of food, and we'll have more wars, and we'll have less middle-class people, and we will have more people out in the streets. Those are the things that I know are coming. But what I will do is I will work, and I will work every day and do the best I can to help this movement advance, to fight against what's happening to our world.
Thank you. Lynn?
What will happen a year from now? I'm very concerned about what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, actually, in our own state with the governor's proposed budget. What can happen in a year is more and more pressure, more and more of a crisis created, more direct action that's targeted at things like foreclosures, things like lack of health care, lack of access to health care, more direct action that's going to create the conditions, I think, in which policymakers will have to do something different. Nick Licata is a good example of a policymaker who's constantly pushing to do the right thing. We need to make sure that there's many more policymakers who feel the pressure to do something right, so that a year from now, we're actually, the climate, the culture, the conversation has changed so that we're talking about how we're going to get more revenue into the state, how we're going to fund education and health care and get kids out of poverty, rather than talking about barely sustaining what little people have.
Nick?
Okay, Frank?
I would say that in the last election, which was last Tuesday, I believe, there were real victories. First of all, there's been a victory of a people's movement in Wisconsin. In Ohio, it was phenomenal. So that I think the potential is great. The anxiety, anger of people in the United States is tremendous. And if we can tap into that, I think that we can have a real impact. Going to your point, Lynn, in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not sure the date, we have a special session of the legislature in Olympia. And all that's on the table right now is cuts. And it's going to devastate health care. It's going to devastate aid to disabled people who are desperately in need of health care. And it's going to decimate education in this state. So my friend John Burbank, who runs the Economic Opportunity Institute, wrote an article the other day, and I've been carrying it around and sharing it with people, and he said, why don't we occupy the state legislature? So, and he said, it's really amazing. You got a lot of corporate tax breaks, out-of-state banks, right? Casinos, you name it. Big corporations. We've got the target. And do you know something? If we could close those tax breaks, we would have enough money to guarantee a scholarship to every community college person that wants to go to community college and fund early childhood development. We would have the money we need to turn around education in the state. So why don't we occupy Olympia and the legislature?
Okay, next four folks, go ahead.
What's good, everybody? Wake up at night. So I'm going to keep my comments brief. I'm about to get on the radio with this in a minute. KBCS 91.3. I'm about to get on at 10. What's cracking? What's up, hip-hop? My name is Senator Gregory C. Lewis. I'm part of Hip Hop Occupies work group, also part of the Anti-Fees Committee, okay? And I think my message to everybody here, especially y'all who are middle class, your class is falling, it's failing, it's done. Do not fear too great a poverty. We do not, so we are out here occupying. Now, I've been homeless since about spring, okay? So this ain't no elementary school ground playing. This is not no game, all right? So, and it's not just about me, okay? It's about global equity. I understand this because I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the third world that my tax dollars have been bombing into the Stone Age since I've been a child. Now, this did not stop simply because of Nixon, because now we get into who came after him, Gerald Ford, and all the little CIA things they were doing all over the world, okay? We can look at, things like Freeway Ricky Ross. That was going on in this country during the Nixon administration, throwing dope in the community, killing Panthers, and putting people in prison, okay? Affirmative action was the alternative to the meeting that occurred in Philly in 1971, considering the Black Panther Party and all other revolutionary organizations who called a what? A constitutional convention to see what direction we should go. So for you to say that we here at Occupy Seattle don't have any demands, it's real simple. Just like our folks in Egypt, just like our folks in Tunisia, just like our folks in the Middle East, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, it's about regime change. And really, at this point, any Democrat or Republican can either do one of two things: get down with this, get down, or surrender. Because your time is ticking down, it's about to go bye-bye, and it's time for you to join humanity, because if you do not, I promise you, the enemies that you've made around the country are going to sit down next to you when you're on vacation and push the button and go click. And guess what? You, your family, your friends, and the whole building goes up. Why? Why? I'm going to tell you why. It's not about their religion. It's not about their ideology. It's about their desperation based upon what the United States is doing to people all over the world in our name, quote unquote, and what they're starting to do to us here. Okay? The 1% is hand in glove with our government. Okay? That's why it's not our government. So there's only one thing to do in a situation like that. Real deal regime change, okay? Walk like an Egyptian or die like a cockroach. Those are your choices. I'm out. And wake up in my night.
So we had a lot of reference to this being a democracy in this country, but let me hit you something. Does anybody know the definition of fascism? Fascism is when political government merges with corporate powers. What the hell do we have? Come on, man. We're not living in a democratic society. And the thing is, my question though is, everybody's talking about like this poverty, and people are rolling the poverty in the schools, that we gotta improve the schools. But where has the improvement to the schools of the Black and Latino and Asian communities that have been living in poverty and haven't had a good book that caught up with everything else in the last 30, 40 years? How come that these communities are living in poverty and then people expect that, like, oh, well, now that the middle class is under attack, it's a problem. It's been a problem. This is not new. It's been a problem since the day of slavery was invented. The proletariat working class has tried to rise up before, particularly Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton, Ashada Shakur. They rose up, and guess what happened to them? All my heroes are dead, in prison, or in political asylum in Cuba. So the thing is, like, when people start talking to me about, when 1%ers sit on a panel and talk to me about how they are with the Occupy Seattle movement, so sorry for my skepticism. Because obviously, to the little person who sold his business to Microsoft, how come you're making contributions? How come you sit there and you talk about it like you care about this movement, but people are sitting in cushy homes where other people are starving, living in a car, living in shelters, living in apartment complexes that are nothing but organizations claiming to be nonprofits, but are poverty pimps, taking advantage of people.
Thank you.
So, hold on. So the thing is, I ask for the people here. I ask for the people here to look inside themselves, not look up to anybody else to make something happen. It's not on the politicians. It's not on representative democracy. It's about direct democracy, where the people have the power.
Thank you.
So I want to address real quick the issue of demands.
Excuse me, I think we're over.
Well, we are, but let me explain. I made a promise of 2 more people. So you would definitely speak, and the person after him, but if you can make it quick. And then the folks who run this place said everybody's invited downstairs to continue the dialogue, okay? But if you could make you and the next person, and I feel like I want to at least give you that opportunity.
Okay, so I just want to address our demands and say that they're being sorted, debated, and considered, and that there are many factors determining what we're traditionally limited by. We have made our first demand, which is that the government to keep its money locally, rather than giving it to international banks to finance war and their gambling addiction. The thing is, we are so broad, we are so universal in our scope, everything is on the table. To ask us to take anything off, whittle them down, and create nice little sound bites is an urged conditioning cultivated by corporate media and the entrenched hierarchy. We are the people, okay? Our demands will be forthcoming. The great thing about our movement is we want everyone to be heard and everyone have a voice. Secondly, I've been occupying Seattle City Hall for about a month. I've met many social organizers who continue to spread their ideals and ideas in the name of the Occupy movement. I love meeting new people, especially politically active people. And the great thing about the people I've met is they listen, which is a roundabout way of saying citizens listening to citizens is a beautiful thing. The missing piece of this puzzle for laying our demands at the government's ears and having them listen is that they don't. Our national government especially, and even our city government, have procedures for decades that erected barriers between the specifics of daily government operations and their accountability and the input of the people they wish that they should be providing for. My question is directed towards Nick Licata. Do you think the access to city officials, including being escorted around City Hall by security, is adequate access to government officials? Also, what opportunities are there for members and groups in this community to access their council reps, and how are you going to guarantee that the public can debate and be heard regarding the council's positions and influencing, the council's position on all issues, as well as provide them with the ability to influence their government as guaranteed by our nation's founders? And just another thing, what is it going to take for you and I to sit down at the same table and talk for a bit?
We will definitely sit down and talk. We've done it once, we'll do it again. And the city hall is open, and first time I've heard people being followed around by security.
Yeah, but we're escorted around if we come in at the wrong time of the day. And just there's a general feeling of being unwelcome there. And the thing is, all these people in this audience, including myself, have paid for that facility, and we should have access to it.
Next person, and you're the last one. Go ahead.
Hello, good evening. My name is Martin. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. I will speak from my experience down at Westlake and also the demonstrations at the Sheraton, at Chase on Broadway, and also just the many demonstrations we've had over the past. I'd like to ask questions to the audience and to the panelists, to everyone really. You know, what incentivizes a police officer to use his bike as a weapon against a young girl? That's what I want to ask. You know, what kind of system allows this to occur? Because I've seen the worst of humanity behind a shield, behind a gun, and I've seen it. And for folks to try to discount what I'm saying, there's plenty of video, there's plenty of research, there's plenty of articles written about this. Just do your research. I think secondly, the best metaphor for what's happening right now is that, again, there's a river happening. There's a change, and the river is moving very quickly. And there are people who want to stick to the riverbank, will try to cling to the riverbank, but they realize that after a while, it's useless to try to cling to the riverbank because things are happening very quickly, and either you're with it or you're not with it. Because we need as much help as possible for what's happening next, what's coming next. Because things are going to change in ways that we cannot possibly understand, but we all have to do it together because this is a community of human beings, you know, regardless of our backgrounds. And lastly, our future. You have to ask yourself, you know, are you a citizen? Are you a consumer? Some of the other speakers who spoke about have mentioned education. Again, you have public school students learning from textbooks that are well beyond 10 years old, 12 years old, learning from material that's useless for the present. So our future is education. We're a country that has the fewest hours of education per child by comparison. It's just, I guess, our future again is creating use through our labor and instead of excess. So again, the future is us. We're not a threat. Again, we're not a threat. We're just a community of like-minded individuals trying to create sustainability. And this is what, you know, Occupy is about. If anyone goes down to Seattle Central and actually observes what's going on, maybe you'll have a better opinion of what this is. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much for the great way of summarizing many of our feelings tonight. You are all invited to go downstairs. Thank you very much for the panel being here. I think they deserve a great hand, as all of you do, for being here. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, I have a quick announcement to make. So this coming Friday, November 18th, Hip Hop Occupies and the People of Color Caucus, we're organizing an event called Rise and Decolonize. It's a global movement that's taking place in different cities and also different countries around the Occupy movement. And we have not been given a permit for the sound system to go past 6 p.m. We have been requesting it for a long time, and now we just found out this past Thursday that we were denied the permit. It's a hip-hop concert with no sound permit, so that doesn't make sense. We really hope people can call City Hall. We are giving out flyers. Someone's giving out flyers, and we hope you guys can tell them to let us have this event.